In the grim darkness of the far future, there exists a priesthood unlike any other. They are the keepers of forbidden knowledge, the guardians of ancient machinery, and the architects of humanity's technological survival. They are the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and their existence is a paradox of devotion and horror, of enlightenment and degradation, of salvation and damnation. To understand the brutal life of a tech priest is to peer into one of the Imperium's darkest corners, where faith and technology merge into something that transcends both human and machine, yet fails to capture the best qualities of either. These servants of the machine, God, walk a razor's edge between genius and madness, between humanity and mechanism, slowly transforming themselves into living weapons in service to the Omnissiah. Their journey is one of sacrifice, pain, and ultimately, the gradual erasure of everything that once made them human. This is not a tale of glory, though glory is what they seek. This is not a story of heroism, though they believe themselves heroes. This is the brutal reality of what it means to serve the machine god in the 41st millennium, where the price of knowledge is paid in flesh, blood, and sanity. Welcome to the world of the tech priests, where the boundaries between the organic and the mechanical blur until they cease to exist at all. Birth of a tech priest. Initiation and transformation. The journey to becoming a tech priest begins long before the first augmentation, long before the first ritual, long before the first prayer to the Omnissiah. It begins with selection, and selection is rarely gentle. On the forge worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus, children are watched from birth, their every action catalogued, their every aptitude measured. Those who show promise, those whose minds demonstrate the capacity for technical understanding, or whose bodies prove resilient to the harsh conditions of the manufactorums, are marked for a different fate than their peers. Some children are born into families who have served the Mechanicus for generations, their genetic lineage carefully tracked and optimized over centuries. These fortunate few know their destiny from the moment they draw their first breath in the toxic air of Mars or one of its sister forge worlds. Others are taken from the lower hives, plucked from obscurity because some tech adept noticed an unusual aptitude for machinery or an uncanny ability to coax life from dying equipment. Still others are volunteers, drawn by promises of power, knowledge, or escape from the grinding poverty that defines life for billions in the Imperium. Regardless of how they arrive at the gates of the Mechanicus, all aspirants face the same brutal process of transformation. The initiation begins with tests, endless tests designed to measure not just intelligence, but adaptability, pain tolerance, and most importantly, faith. The aspirants are exposed to increasingly complex technical problems, forced to solve puzzles that would baffle most imperial citizens. They are taught the basics of the cult Mechanicus, the prayers and litanies that must accompany every technical operation. They learn that a machine is not merely a tool, but a sacred artifact, imbued with a spirit that must be respected and appeased. Those who fail these initial tests are not sent home. The Mechanicus wastes nothing, especially not human resources. Failed aspirants find themselves repurposed, their bodies augmented not for the priesthood, but for menial labor. They become the countless millions of tech thralls and servitors that keep the forge worlds functioning, their minds wiped or heavily conditioned, their bodies modified to perform single repetitive tasks for the remainder of their existence. It is a fate that drives many aspirants to succeed at any cost. For those who pass, the true transformation begins. The first augmentation is always the most traumatic. Young acolytes, often no more than children, are brought into sterile chambers that reek of sacred oils and disinfectant. There, they are strapped to surgical tables while tech priests of higher rank prepare the sacred implements. The Mechanicus does not believe in anesthesia for these procedures, viewing pain as part of the religious experience. To become one with the machine is to transcend the weaknesses of flesh, and that transcendence must be earned through suffering. The first implants are always the most essential, the foundation upon which all future augmentation will be built. The cyber mantle is installed first, a framework of metal, wires, and impulse transmitters that is bolted directly onto the spine and lower rib cage. This framework serves as an anchorage point for future cybernetics, particularly the mechadendrites that will become as natural to a tech priest as their own limbs. The installation is excruciating, requiring the drilling of holes into bone, the threading of wires through muscle tissue, and the fusion of metal with living flesh. The young acolytes scream, they weep, they beg for mercy. There is none. Next comes the cranial circuitry, a series of linked processors, implants, and cortical circuits that enhance mental capacity. These devices must interface directly with the brain, requiring portions of the skull to be removed and replaced with metal housings. Electrodes are inserted into brain tissue, connecting the organic mind to the machine components that will augment it. The procedure takes hours, during which the acolyte remains conscious, feeling every cut, every insertion, every moment as their very consciousness is rewired. The electrograft follows, grafted into the nervous system to allow better communion with machinery. This small device enables the initiate to literally feel the machines they work with, to sense the flow of electricity through circuits as clearly as they once felt the warmth of sunlight on their skin. It is a blessing and a curse, for with this heightened sensitivity comes the ability to experience the pain of damaged machinery as if it were damage to one's own body. These initial augmentations take weeks to complete, and the recovery period is even longer. The young acolytes must learn to live with their new components, to manage the constant input of data from their enhanced senses, to cope with the phantom pains that come from having foreign objects integrated into their flesh. Many never fully adjust. They become the failures, the unstable ones, who must be further modified or repurposed. Their screams echo through the halls of the Mechanicus temples, a constant reminder to others of what awaits those who cannot adapt. But for those who survive and adapt, there is a strange sort of triumph. They have taken their first steps on the path to becoming one with the machine. They have proven their devotion to the Omnissiah through their willingness to endure suffering. They are no longer fully human, but they are not yet fully machine. They exist in a liminal space, and it is in this space that they will spend the rest of their lives, constantly pushing further away from their humanity in pursuit of mechanical perfection. As they progress through the ranks of the Mechanicus, additional augmentations follow. Mechadendrites sprout from their backs, serpentine mechanical limbs tipped with tools, weapons, or manipulator claws. These become extensions of the tech priest's will, capable of performing delicate repairs or crushing enemies with equal ease. Optical enhancements replace natural eyes, granting the ability to see in spectrums invisible to baseline humans. Respiratory systems are upgraded to filter the toxic atmospheres of Forge worlds. Digestive systems are supplemented or entirely replaced by more efficient nutrient processing units. Each augmentation requires another surgery, another period of agony, another step further from humanity. The tech priests embrace this process with religious fervor, viewing each piece of flesh replaced with metal as a step closer to the divine. They are taught that flesh is weak, that it decays and fails, that only through the purity of the machine can true immortality be achieved. And so they return again and again to the augmentation chambers, voluntarily submitting to procedures that would be considered torture in any other context. The transformation is not merely physical. As the body changes, so too does the mind. The rite of pure thought, undertaken by those who advance to the rank of magos, involves the excision of the right hemisphere of the brain, and its replacement with a cogitator. The creative, emotional, illogical right side of the brain is cut away, leaving only the logical, calculating left hemisphere linked directly to machine components. This frees the recipient from the tyranny of emotion, from the weakness of empathy, from any annoying sense of self-preservation. They become pure logic, pure reason, pure devotion to the quest for knowledge. But at what cost? Those who have undergone the rite of pure thought are forever changed. They can no longer understand art, cannot appreciate beauty, cannot form emotional connections with others. They view everything, including other living beings, as systems to be optimized or resources to be utilized. They are brilliant, efficient, and utterly inhuman. They are exactly what the Mechanicus wants them to be. The Forge World, a toxic paradise. To understand the life of a tech priest, one must first understand their home. The Forge Worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus are unlike any other planets in the Imperium. These are not worlds shaped by nature, but by industry, not environments designed for life, but for production. They are monuments to humanity's technological ambition and to the brutal pragmatism that defines the Mechanicus worldview. Mars, the first and greatest of the Forge Worlds, exemplifies this terrible grandeur. The red planet that once hosted ancient dreams of terraforming has been transformed into something far different from those early visions. The surface is a wilderness of polluted ochre deserts, broken by metropolises the size of tectonic plates. The air, once carefully maintained by atmospheric shields during the dark age of technology, is now saturated with toxic gases, the byproduct of 10,000 years of unceasing industrial production. Rivers that might once have flowed with water now carry streams of toxic runoff, heavy with industrial waste and chemical pollutants that would kill an unaugmented human in moments. The Forge Worlds exist in a state of perpetual production. Day and night, though such distinctions become meaningless under skies choked with smog, the manufacturers churn out weapons, vehicles, and equipment for the Imperial war machine. The landscape is dominated by forge temples and factory complexes that stretch to the horizon, massive structures of corroded steel, iron ventilation chimneys, and shining glass pipes. These complexes are so vast that entire populations live within them, never once seeing natural sunlight or breathing air that hasn't been filtered through archaic purification systems. Radiation is a constant companion on the Forge Worlds. The production processes, the aging reactors, the experimental technologies all contribute to background radiation levels that would be immediately fatal to baseline humans. The Skitarii warriors and the lower-ranking menials have their bodies modified specifically to withstand these conditions, their cells reinforced against mutation, their skin thickened to absorb radiation with minimal damage. For the tech priests themselves, such concerns are minimal. Their augmented bodies, more machine than flesh, are far more resistant to radiation than any biological organism could be. The toxic environment is not seen as a drawback by the Mechanicus, but as a feature. The harsh conditions serve as a constant reminder that flesh is weak and the machine is strong. Those who cannot survive without augmentation are deemed unworthy. Those who complain about the conditions reveal themselves as clinging too tightly to their biological heritage. The tech priests have created a world that actively selects for those willing to abandon their humanity, and they see this as entirely appropriate. Temperature extremes are another defining characteristic of Forge World life. The industrial processes generate enormous amounts of heat, creating zones where the ambient temperature can exceed what an unaugmented human could survive. Other areas, particularly those far from the forge furnaces, can plunge to temperatures cold enough to freeze water solid. The tech priests navigate these extremes with the aid of their augmentations, their modified bodies capable of functioning in conditions that would kill normal humans within minutes. The social structure of a forge world reflects the brutal hierarchy of the Mechanicus itself. At the bottom are the menials, the labor units who perform the most basic tasks. These are unaugmented or minimally augmented humans, born to serve, living in conditions that barely qualify as habitable. They sort isotope scrap, tend hydroponics, break ore, stoke forges. Their lives are short, brutal, and meaningless, except insofar as they contribute to the endless production quotas. They aspire to nothing more than perhaps earning enough favor to be selected for the Scutarii, to receive their first battle-grade augmentations, and escape the grinding poverty of menial existence. Above them are the Scutarii themselves, the tech guard warriors who serve as the military arm of the Mechanicus. These cybernetically enhanced soldiers are living weapons, their bodies extensively modified for war. They have replaced fallible ligaments and flesh with titanium servo motors and bionic musculature. Their lower legs are typically replaced entirely with prostheses of inviolate alloy, giving them enhanced mobility across the toxic wastelands. Their brains have been modified with emotional partition implants, blunting individuality so they might perform more like unquestioning machines. They are loyal to the point of fanaticism, willing to march for months without rest, to fight without fear, to die without hesitation if their tech priest masters command it. Higher still are the true tech priests, the ordained priesthood, who command both the menials and the Scutarii. These range from lowly tech adepts, barely initiated into the mysteries, to magi, who have spent centuries in service to the Omnissiah. They move through the forge worlds like living saints, their augmented forms marking them as chosen ones. The lesser citizens prostrate themselves as tech priests pass, offering prayers to the machine god and begging for blessings upon their equipment. At the apex of each forge world's hierarchy sits the Fabricator General, the absolute ruler who governs the planet as both temporal lord and spiritual leader. The Fabricator General of Mars holds a unique position, serving not only as the ruler of the first forge world, but as the head of the entire Adeptus Mechanicus, and holding a permanent seat among the High Lords of Terra. This individual wields power that can shape the fate of the entire Imperium, for without the Mechanicus and its manufacturing capabilities, the Imperial war machine would grind to a halt. The infrastructure of a forge world is a marvel and a nightmare in equal measure. Orbital elevators reach from the surface into the depths of space like skeletal fingers, allowing materials and finished products to be transported to and from the vast fleets that orbit above. Tracked cities crawl across toxic deserts, constantly moving lest their walls be dissolved by the corrosive clouds that drift across the landscape. Underground complexes burrow deep into the planetary crust, some extending for kilometers, housing secret research facilities where the most dangerous experiments are conducted away from potential oversight. The sound of a forge world is overwhelming. The constant hammering of forge hammers, the roar of plasma furnaces, the hiss of hydraulics, the grinding of gears, the screaming of metal being shaped and reshaped. These sounds blend together into a cacophony that would drive an unaugmented human mad within hours. For the tech priests, this is the music of the Omnissiah, the sacred symphony of production and progress. They hear beauty in the rhythmic pounding of the manufactorums, holiness in the efficient operation of ancient machinery. The smell is equally intense: ozone from electrical discharges, the acrid tang of burning promethium, the sweet-sick odor of chemical coolants, the metallic taste of industrial pollutants, the organic stench of servitor flesh kept barely alive by life support systems. These odors permeate everything, seeping into robes, into skin, into lungs. New initiates often retch continuously for weeks until their bodies adapt or are modified to filter out the worst of the sensory assault. Living conditions on a forge world vary dramatically based on one's rank within the Mechanicus hierarchy. The menials exist in hab blocks that would be considered slums on any civilized world. Cramped spaces with minimal life support, where dozens might share a single room. Food is synthetic protein paste, dispensed at regular intervals. Water is recycled through systems that barely maintain potability standards. Disease is rampant, accidents are common, and life expectancy is measured in decades at best. The tech priests, by contrast, dwell in chambers that reflect their status. Junior adepts might share dormitories equipped with charging stations for their augmentations and access to data terminals for study. Senior magi occupy entire complexes, surrounded by servitors and equipped with personal workshops where they can pursue their research in relative comfort. The Fabricator General's palace is a city unto itself, a sprawling complex of laboratories, archives, sanctuaries, and defensive positions that could withstand siege warfare. Yet even for the highest-ranking tech priests, life on a Forge world is defined by duty and ritual. There is no respite from the demands of the machine god, no vacation from the endless quest for knowledge. Every waking moment is devoted to work, to prayer, to study, to the maintenance of the machines that keep the Forge world functioning. Leisure is an unknown concept, viewed as wasteful and contrary to the efficiency that the Mechanicus prizes above all else. The Forge worlds are also repositories of knowledge, containing vast archives that stretch back thousands of years. These libraries house not just technical specifications and manufacturing data, but also the collected wisdom of generations of tech priests, their experimental results, their theoretical treatises, their theological debates. Access to these archives is jealously guarded, with only those of sufficient rank permitted to view certain sections. The knowledge within could revolutionize Imperial technology, but it is kept locked away, shared only with those deemed worthy by the Mechanicus hierarchy. Daily rituals and religious obligations. The life of a tech priest is structured around an intricate web of rituals, prayers, and ceremonies that govern every aspect of their existence. To the uninitiated, these rituals might seem like mere superstition, elaborate theater performed by those who should know better. But to dismiss them as such is to misunderstand the fundamental nature of the cult Mechanicus. These rituals are not empty gestures, but the very foundation upon which the Mechanicus operates, a carefully constructed system that blends genuine technical knowledge with religious mysticism into something that somehow, improbably, functions. The day begins, as all things must for a tech priest, with devotions. Before any work can commence, before any machine can be activated, prayers must be offered to the Omnissiah. A tech priest might spend an hour or more in morning prayer, standing before a shrine dedicated to the machine god, their mechanical voice modulator intoning the sacred litanies in a mixture of Gothic and Lingua Technis, the binary language of the Mechanicus. These prayers are not simple requests for blessing, but complex technical specifications disguised as theological statements, mnemonics that help the tech priest remember proper procedures while simultaneously reinforcing the religious framework that gives their work meaning. After morning prayers comes the inspection of one's augmentations. This is both a practical necessity and a religious obligation. Each implant, each mechanical component, each servo and circuit must be checked for proper function. Sacred oils are applied to moving parts, connections are tested and retested. Diagnostic routines are run to ensure that all systems operate within acceptable parameters. This process can take hours for a heavily augmented tech priest, as they methodically examine every aspect of their transformed body. The ritual is accompanied by prayers of maintenance, chants that serve the dual purpose of focusing the mind and providing a rhythmic structure to the inspection process. Only after these personal rituals are complete can a tech priest begin their actual work. But even the simplest task is wrapped in layers of religious ceremony. Activating a vehicle's engine, a process that in the distant past might have involved simply turning a key, now requires an elaborate ritual. The tech priest must first apply ritual oils to specific components, anointing the machine in patterns that have been passed down through generations. Sacred resins must be burned, filling the air with fragrant smoke that is believed to please the machine spirit. Then come the hymns, long and complex chants that must be recited in their entirety before the activation sequence can begin. These rituals serve multiple purposes. On one level, they are indeed genuine maintenance procedures. The application of oils lubricates components, preventing wear and tear. The burning of resins can help identify leaks or malfunctions by the way the smoke patterns change. The hymns, with their specific cadences and timing, help ensure that activation sequences are performed at the correct pace, preventing damage from rushing through procedures too quickly. But on another level, they are something more. They are a way of showing respect to the machine spirit, the semi-mystical entity that the Mechanicus believes dwells within all complex machinery. The concept of the machine spirit is central to understanding Mechanicus culture. According to their theology, all machines possess a spirit, a form of consciousness that must be properly appeased for the machine to function optimally. The more complex the machine, the more powerful and temperamental its spirit. Simple devices like hammers or wrenches have only the most rudimentary spirits, but a battle tank or a starship possesses a machine spirit of considerable power, one that can be angered by improper treatment or neglect. Whether machine spirits actually exist is a matter of theological debate even within the Mechanicus. Some tech priests believe quite literally that machines are inhabited by spiritual entities, perhaps fragments of the Omnissiah's own essence. Others view the concept more metaphorically, understanding it as a useful framework for encouraging proper maintenance and respectful treatment of technology. Still others, the most radical and heretical, suggest that what are called machine spirits might actually be extremely simple artificial intelligences, remnants of programming from the dark age of technology. Such speculation is dangerous, as the creation of artificial intelligence is one of the greatest heresies known to the Mechanicus, a sin that once nearly destroyed humanity during the cybernetic revolt. Regardless of the truth, the practical effect is the same. Tech priests treat their machines with reverence bordering on worship. They perform elaborate rituals, not because they have scientific evidence of their necessity, but because tradition demands it, because their mentors taught them these ways, because the accumulated wisdom of 10,000 years suggests that these methods work. And indeed, they do work. Machines maintained according to Mechanicus rituals tend to function longer and more reliably than those treated as mere tools. Whether this is due to the spiritual dimension, the practical benefits of careful maintenance disguised as ritual, or simple confirmation bias, is impossible to determine. The workday of a tech priest is punctuated by regular prayer intervals. Every few hours, all work must cease for a period of devotion. These prayers serve multiple purposes beyond the purely religious. They provide rest periods for even heavily augmented tech priests, whose organic components still require periodic breaks despite their enhanced endurance. They synchronize work across the Forge world, ensuring that all tech priests pause simultaneously, which can help coordinate complex manufacturing processes that require precise timing. And they reinforce the hierarchical structure of the Mechanicus, as junior tech priests must cease their work when their superiors call for prayer, regardless of what they are doing. Special rituals mark significant events in a tech priest's work. The awakening of a machine spirit that has been dormant requires the rite of awakening, a ceremony that can take days for particularly complex or ancient machines. Rune priests specialize in this form of ritual, scribing sacred symbols and mathematical formulae onto machinery, while chanting liturgies designed to coax dormant machine spirits back to wakefulness. The repair of a broken machine is not simply a matter of replacing components, but requires the rite of repair, which includes prayers of apology to the machine spirit for allowing the damage to occur, promises of better maintenance in the future, and requests for forgiveness. The creation of new technology, or more accurately, the rediscovery of old patterns, requires the most elaborate rituals of all. The rite of construction can take weeks or months, as tech priests meticulously follow ancient blueprints while offering constant prayers for guidance. Every component must be blessed before installation. every connection sanctified, every test firing accompanied by chants requesting the machine's spirit's cooperation. Deviation from the traditional patterns is considered heresy of the highest order, for the Mechanicus believes that the ancients of the dark age of technology had achieved technological perfection. To modify their designs is to suggest that one knows better than those enlightened ancestors, an act of unforgivable hubris. Meals, for those tech priests who still require them, are also ritualized affairs. Food is seen as a regrettable necessity of the flesh, a weakness that superior augmentation might one day eliminate entirely. Those who must eat do so while reciting prayers of forgiveness for their body's continued organic needs. The food itself is typically nutrient-paced, scientifically formulated to provide optimal nutrition with minimal waste. It is consumed efficiently, without pleasure or ceremony, just another task to be completed before returning to more important work. Sleep is similarly ritualized for those who have not yet progressed to the point where such rest is unnecessary. Before entering dormancy, a tech priest must perform the rite of cessation, prayers that ask the Omnissiah to watch over them during their vulnerable hours, and to allow their augmentations to recharge properly. Some tech priests connect themselves directly to charging stations, their bodies literally plugging into the Forge World's power grid to replenish their energy reserves while their organic components rest. The most sacred rituals are those performed in the presence of the most holy relics. When a fragment of a standard template construct is recovered, when ancient technology from the Dark Age is unearthed, the entire Forge world might participate in ceremonies of thanksgiving. These events can last for days, with tech priests of all ranks coming to view the recovered relic, to offer prayers of gratitude to the Omnissiah for revealing such secrets, to pledge themselves anew to the quest for knowledge that defines the Mechanicus mission. Death, too, is marked by elaborate ritual. When a tech priest passes into the Omnissiah's embrace, their body is not simply discarded, but carefully disassembled. Useful augmentations are recovered and sanctified for reuse, for the sacred machinery that served one priest well can serve another. The organic components are typically rendered down for protein reclamation. Waste, not want, not being a fundamental principle of Mechanicus efficiency. The deceased's data archives are downloaded and stored in the vast libraries, their knowledge preserved for future generations. In this way, a tech priest achieves a form of immortality, their wisdom and their sacred augmentations continuing to serve the machine god long after their biological death. The brutal augmentation process. The transformation of flesh into machine is the defining characteristic of a tech priest's existence, and it is a process that never truly ends. From the moment of their initiation until the day of their death, tech priests continuously modify and upgrade their bodies, each augmentation bringing them closer to their ideal of mechanical perfection, while simultaneously taking them further from their humanity. This is not a gentle process. This is not a painless evolution. This is brutal, agonizing, and often traumatic body modification on a scale that would be considered torture in any other context. The earliest augmentations, those performed on initiates and junior adepts, follow standardized patterns that have been refined over millennia. These are the foundation augmentations, the essential modifications that transform a baseline human into something capable of surviving and functioning within the Mechanicus. The cyber mantle, cranial circuitry, and electrograft that we discussed earlier are just the beginning. As a tech priest progresses through the ranks, additional augmentations become not just available, but expected. Mechadendrites are among the most iconic augmentations, mechanical tentacles that sprout from a tech priest's back or shoulders. These versatile appendages come in many varieties, each designed for specific purposes. Utility mechadendrites house arrays of tools for repair and maintenance work. Weapon mechadendrites mount firearms or melee weapons, turning the tech priest into a walking weapons platform. Manipulator mechadendrites provide additional hands for delicate work or heavy lifting, A senior tech priest might possess half a dozen or more of these serpentine limbs, each one requiring surgical installation that involves drilling anchor points into the spine and ribcage, running control cables through existing musculature, and connecting neural interfaces directly to the spinal cord. The installation of mechadendrites is particularly traumatic because the tech priest must remain conscious throughout the procedure. The neural connections require active feedback from the recipient to ensure proper integration. The tech priest must learn to control their new limbs while those limbs are being attached, a process that creates a confusing and painful sensory overload as the brain struggles to interpret signals from appendages that shouldn't exist. Many tech priests describe the experience as feeling their body being invaded by foreign objects that are somehow also part of themselves, a violation that their consciousness recognizes and rejects, even as they willfully submit to it. Optical augmentations represent another category of common modification. Natural eyes, limited to the narrow visible spectrum, are seen as woefully inadequate by the mechanicus. Tech priests routinely replace their eyes with bionic alternatives that can perceive infrared, ultraviolet, electromagnetic fields, even data streams from nearby machinery. Some opt for multiple optical units, becoming many-eyed like insects, each artificial eye tuned to a different sensory band. The removal of natural eyes is performed without anesthetic, the better to ensure that the recipient maintains consciousness as the optic nerves are severed and rerouted to mechanical replacements. The procedure typically involves a surgical drill to remove the eye from its socket, followed by the installation of mechanical mounting points in the skull, then the connection of the bionic eye to the existing neural pathways. Respiratory augmentation is virtually mandatory for any tech priest who works regularly in the toxic environments of the Forge worlds. Natural lungs, designed for clean oxygen-nitrogen atmospheres, simply cannot cope with the chemical cocktails that pass for air in most mechanicus facilities. The installation of respiratory scrubbers requires opening the chest cavity and installing mechanical filters that supplement or replace the natural lungs' function. Some tech priests opt for complete lung replacement, trading biological organs for more efficient mechanical alternatives that can extract oxygen from virtually any atmosphere and filter out deadly toxins. Digestive system modification follows a similar logic. Why rely on the inefficient chemical processing of organic digestion when superior mechanical alternatives exist? Advanced tech priests often have their stomachs and intestines replaced or heavily supplemented with nutrient processing units that can extract maximum value from minimal input. Some go further, replacing the entire digestive tract with fuel cells that run on chemical feedstocks, eliminating the need for conventional food entirely. The installation of these systems is complex, requiring the removal or bypass of major organs, the rerouting of blood vessels, and the installation of entirely new systems for waste disposal. The most extreme augmentation available within the mechanicus is the rite of pure thought, also called the rite of clear thought. This procedure, typically reserved for those advancing to the rank of magos, involves the surgical removal of a significant portion of the brain's right hemisphere and its replacement with cogitator implants. The right hemisphere, associated with creativity, emotion, intuition, and pattern recognition, is viewed by many in the mechanicus as the source of illogical thinking that hampers true understanding. By excising it and replacing it with pure computational machinery, the tech priest achieves a state of perfect logic, freed from the distractions of emotion and the weakness of subjective experience. The rite of pure thought is controversial even within the mechanicus. Some view it as the ultimate expression of devotion to the omnissiah, the final rejection of flawed flesh in favor of pure machine logic. Others consider it an extreme measure that strips away too much of what makes a tech priest effective, removing their ability to innovate or think laterally in favor of rigid computational thinking. Regardless of theological debates, the practical effects are undeniable. Those who undergo the rite emerge as fundamentally different beings, capable of incredible feats of calculation and logical reasoning, but utterly unable to appreciate beauty, form meaningful emotional connections, or understand the subjective experiences of others. The process of undergoing the rite of pure thought takes several days. The skull must be opened, sections of it removed and replaced with mechanical housings. The brain tissue itself must be carefully excised piece by piece, while the tech priest remains conscious to provide feedback on which areas control which functions. Cogitator components are installed in stages, each one tested thoroughly before the next is added. Throughout this process, the recipient experiences their own consciousness fragmenting and reforming, parts of their mind going offline as organic tissue is removed, new modes of thought emerging as machine components activate. Many describe it as dying and being reborn as something else entirely, watching their old self disappear piece by piece, while a new, purer self emerges. Not all augmentations are voluntary or desirable. Tech priests frequently suffer injuries in the course of their duties, particularly those who serve in combat roles or who work with dangerous experimental technology. Battle damage must be repaired, and the Mechanicus approach to medical care is simple. Replace damaged organic components with mechanical alternatives. A tech priest who loses an arm to enemy fire receives a bionic replacement. One whose legs are crushed in an industrial accident gets reinforced mechanical limbs that are stronger than the originals. Severe facial trauma results in the installation of a mechanical faceplate. These emergency augmentations lack the careful ritual and preparation of planned modifications, making them even more traumatic. Combat surgeons work quickly to save lives, viewing speed and function as more important than comfort or aesthetics. A wounded tech priest might wake from emergency surgery to find themselves far more machine than they had been before, their body modified in ways they hadn't chosen, their identity altered by necessity rather than devotion. Some embrace these changes as gifts from the Omniseer, signs that they are being guided toward their ultimate form. Others struggle with the loss of choice, with the feeling that pieces of themselves have been stolen rather than willingly surrendered. The psychological impact of extensive augmentation is severe, though the Mechanicus rarely acknowledges this. As more and more flesh is replaced with machine, tech priests begin to experience a phenomenon they call flesh disassociation. They report feeling disconnected from their remaining organic components, experiencing their biological parts as foreign objects rather than integral aspects of self. Visual hallucinations are common, with augmented individuals sometimes seeing their cybernetic parts as flesh or vice versa. Phantom sensations plague those who have lost limbs, with the brain insisting that removed body parts still exist and still hurt. Some tech priests develop what can only be described as addiction to augmentation. They become obsessed with replacing more and more of themselves, driven by a compulsion to achieve complete mechanical perfection. These individuals return again and again to the augmentation chambers, begging for more modifications, more improvements, more chances to shed the last remnants of their weak flesh. The Mechanicus generally encourages this behavior, viewing it as proper devotion rather than psychological dysfunction. After all, is it truly addiction when the goal is becoming one with the Omniseer? Others develop the opposite problem, becoming paralyzed by fear of further augmentation. They recognize intellectually that additional modifications would improve their capabilities and are expected as they rise through the ranks. But they cannot bring themselves to voluntarily submit to more surgery, more pain, more loss of self. These tech priests often find their careers stalling, unable to advance because they lack the augmentations expected of higher ranks. Some eventually overcome their reluctance. Others remain forever at junior ranks, objects of pity or contempt to their more fully augmented brethren. The pain of augmentation never fully fades. Even years after a modification, the connection points between flesh and machine ache. Nerve endings that were severed and rerouted send confused signals to the brain. Mechanical components that lack proper tactile feedback create a constant sense of numbness or alienation from parts of one's own body. Tech priests learn to live with this chronic discomfort, viewing it as a form of penance, a reminder that the path to perfection requires sacrifice. Some even welcome the pain, seeing it as proof that they haven't fully transcended their flesh, that there is still work to be done on their journey toward complete mechanical being. Advanced tech priests, particularly those who have served for centuries, can become unrecognizable as human. They might exist primarily as brains in jars, their organic components reduced to the bare minimum necessary to maintain consciousness, while the vast majority of their form consists of machinery. Some are integrated into larger systems, their bodies fused with workshops or vehicles, unable to move independently, but possessing capabilities far beyond what a mobile form could provide. The oldest and most extensively modified might appear as nothing more than huge mechanical constructs, with perhaps a small window revealing the withered organic core that still contains what remains of a human consciousness. Hierarchy and political warfare. The Adeptus Mechanicus is not a monolithic organization, but a complex web of competing factions, personal ambitions, and ancient rivalries. The hierarchy that structures the Mechanicus is both rigid and flexible, with clear ranks and titles coexisting alongside informal power structures based on knowledge hoarded, allies cultivated, and secrets uncovered. To rise through the ranks of the tech priesthood is to enter a Byzantine political landscape, where one's survival depends as much on political acumen as on technical skill. At the bottom of the official hierarchy are the tech acolytes, unranked members of the cult Mechanicus, still learning the lower mysteries of the machine god. These are typically young individuals, their bodies bearing only the most basic augmentations, their minds filled with fragments of knowledge but lacking true understanding. Acolytes serve as apprentices to higher-ranking tech priests, performing menial tasks, running errands, and absorbing whatever scraps of wisdom their masters deign to share. Life as an acolyte is difficult, marked by long hours, difficult assignments, and constant tests designed to weed out those who lack the necessary dedication or capability. Above the acolytes are the tech adepts, low-ranking but fully initiated members of the priesthood. Adepts have completed their basic training and received their foundational augmentations. They possess genuine technical skills and can perform complex repairs, maintain machinery, and conduct minor rituals without supervision. However, they remain at the mercy of their superiors, assigned to whatever tasks the higher ranks deem appropriate. An adept might spend decades performing routine maintenance on a single system, never advancing, never receiving access to the deeper mysteries that would allow them to progress further. The rank of tech priest proper marks a significant advancement. To be recognized as a full tech priest rather than merely an adept is to gain access to knowledge and authority previously denied. Tech priests supervise the work of adepts and acolytes, conduct important rituals, and begin to specialize in particular fields of study. This is where the elaborate system of specialized roles becomes relevant. A tech priest might become an engineer, specialized in field repairs and maintenance for Imperial Guard units. They might study as a lex mechanic, focusing on data management and information technology. They could pursue the path of the transmechanic, dedicating themselves to communication systems, or become a rune priest, mastering the art of awakening machine spirits through intuitive mechanics. The rank of magos represents true mastery. A magos is recognized as an expert in their chosen field, someone who has devoted decades or centuries to understanding a particular aspect of technology or science. Magi are addressed by titles that reflect their specialization. Magos Biologis for those who study organic systems, Magos Dominus for those who command Mechanicus military forces, Magos Explorator for those who venture into unknown space seeking lost knowledge. The path to becoming a magos requires not just technical expertise, but also political navigation. One must earn the recognition of existing magi, demonstrate mastery through significant accomplishments, and successfully complete whatever trials the local Mechanicus hierarchy demands. Beyond magos lie even more exalted ranks. Archmagos is a title reserved for the most accomplished and senior magi, those whose contributions have shaped entire fields of study or who have made discoveries of exceptional importance. These individuals wield tremendous power within the Mechanicus, commanding vast resources, directing the efforts of hundreds or thousands of lesser tech priests, and sitting on the councils that determine Forge world policy. To become an Archmagos is the dream of many, but the reality is that most tech priests, no matter how skilled or dedicated, will never reach such heights. At the apex of each Forge world's hierarchy sits the Fabricator General, the absolute ruler who governs the planet and represents the Mechanicus in dealings with the broader Imperium. The Fabricator General commands the Forge world's military forces, directs its industrial output, and serves as the chief priest of the local cult Mechanicus. On Mars, the Fabricator General holds the additional title of Magos Mechanicus and sits among the High Lords of Terra, making this individual one of the most powerful people in the entire Imperium. The position is typically held for life, with succession determined through a complex process of election, inheritance, political maneuvering, and sometimes outright conflict. This formal hierarchy, however, tells only part of the story. The real power structures within the Mechanicus are far more complex. Knowledge is the true currency of the Mechanicus, and those who possess rare information or unique skills wield influence far beyond what their official rank might suggest. A junior magos who has discovered a new STC fragment might suddenly find themselves courted by archmagi, seeking access to that knowledge. A tech adept who possesses the only known copy of certain ancient blueprints becomes invaluable regardless of their lowly position. The Mechanicus is divided into numerous factions, each with its own philosophical approach to technology and the quest for knowledge. The most orthodox faction adheres strictly to traditional interpretations of Mechanicus doctrine, believing that all true knowledge was discovered during the dark age of technology and that innovation is heresy. They seek only to recover and preserve ancient wisdom, viewing any attempt to improve upon the works of the ancients as hubris. These conservatives wield significant power, particularly among the senior ranks, and they work tirelessly to suppress what they see as dangerous, radical thinking. In opposition stand the radical factions, tech priests, who believe that the quest for knowledge requires actual experimentation and innovation. They argue that the ancients would not have achieved their technological heights through pure conservatism, and that true devotion to the Omnissiah means continuing to push the boundaries of understanding. These radicals often work in secret, conducting forbidden experiments, collaborating with Xenos races to learn their technologies, or even dabbling in the creation of artificial intelligences, despite the absolute prohibition against such work. Discovery of radical activities can result in exile, execution, or transformation into a servitor. Yet the radicals persist, driven by curiosity and ambition. Between these extremes exist countless smaller factions and subcults, each with their own interpretation of Mechanicus theology and their own agenda. The Omnisciids seek to summon the machine god into physical form. The Cambrians pursue the forbidden science of true artificial intelligence, despite the catastrophic rebellion of the Men of Iron. The various divisiones focus on specific fields of study, from the biologists, who specialize in organic systems, to the cybernetica, who work with robotic constructs. Competition between these factions is fierce, with each seeking to prove the superiority of their approach and secure greater resources and influence. Political warfare within the Mechanicus rarely takes the form of open violence, at least not between tech priests of similar rank. Instead, it is conducted through subtle means. The strategic withholding of information, the sabotage of rivals' experiments through unfortunate accidents, the spreading of rumors about heretical practices, the manipulation of resource allocation to starve competitors of funding. A tech priest who offends the wrong superior might find themselves assigned to hazardous duties with inadequate equipment. One who makes enemies of their peers could discover that crucial data has mysteriously become corrupted, or that their experimental results cannot be replicated. The acquisition and hoarding of knowledge is the primary means by which tech priests advance their positions. Every discovery, every decoded data fragment, every recovered piece of archaeotech represents potential leverage. The question becomes, do you share this knowledge with your superiors, earning recognition and favor, but giving up exclusive access? Do you trade it with peers for different knowledge they possess? Or do you hoard it, keeping it secret until you can leverage it for maximum benefit? There are no easy answers, and choosing wrongly can derail a career or even result in accusations of tech heresy. Personal relationships within the Mechanicus are complex. The rite of pure thought and similar augmentations strip away much of the emotional capacity that would normally form the basis for friendship or loyalty. Yet tech priests still form alliances, mentor-student relationships that can last centuries, or partnerships based on complementary skills. These bonds, however, are fundamentally pragmatic rather than emotional. A tech priest values an ally for what that ally can provide: access to knowledge, protection from enemies, assistance with projects. If that ally ceases to be useful or becomes a liability, the relationship can be severed with the cold logic that defines Mechanicus thinking. Betrayal is common. A promising student might learn everything they can from their mentor and then expose some minor doctrinal irregularity to remove them as a competitor. Allies might share information while each secretly holds back their most valuable discoveries. The promise of advancement can turn the most trusted subordinate into an informant for one's rivals. In the Mechanicus, paranoia is not a flaw but a survival trait. Those who trust too easily find themselves outmaneuvered. Those who never trust anyone struggle to form the alliances necessary for advancement. The relationship between different Forge worlds adds another layer of complexity. While all theoretically owe allegiance to Mars and the Fabricator General, who sits among the High Lords of Terror, the reality is that each Forge world operates with considerable autonomy. They jealously guard their technological secrets, compete for access to STC discoveries, and sometimes engage in outright conflict over resources or theoretical disputes. A tech priest's advancement opportunities can depend significantly on which Forge world they serve. Some are progressive, relatively welcoming to innovation and new ideas. Others are hidebound bastions of conservatism, where the traditional ways are enforced with iron discipline. Military service presents its own political considerations. Magi Dominus, who command Skitarii forces, operate in a different sphere of influence than those focused on pure research or manufacturing. They must maintain relationships with Imperial Guard commanders, Space Marine chapters, and other military forces, balancing the Mechanicus's desire for independence with the practical necessity of cooperation. Success in battle can earn tremendous prestige and access to recovered technology from conquered worlds. Failure can be catastrophic, particularly if valuable equipment is lost, or if the failure can be portrayed as the result of heretical thinking or inadequate devotion. Service with explorator fleets offers both opportunity and risk. These expeditions into unknown space seek lost human colonies, ancient ruins, and potentially undiscovered STC systems. A successful explorator voyage can make careers, with participants returning laden with archaeotech and knowledge. But such expeditions are dangerous, facing Xeno's threats, warp storms, and the unknown terrors that lurk in the void. Many ships never return, their fate unknown. their crews presumably lost to whatever horrors they encountered. Yet tech priests still volunteer for these missions, driven by ambition and the lure of discovery. The quest for knowledge, STCs, and exploration. At the heart of Mechanicus culture lies the quest for knowledge, an all-consuming search for the technological secrets of the past. This quest is not merely a secular pursuit of information, but a religious obligation, a holy mission to recover what was lost during the Age of Strife and the Long Night. The tech priests view themselves as archaeologists of technology, excavators searching through the ruins of a fallen golden age, seeking to recover the wisdom of their ancestors and restore humanity to its former glory. But this quest comes at a terrible price, paid in lives, sanity, and the very humanity of those who pursue it. The object of their search, the Holy Grail, of the Mechanicus is the standard template construct system. STC systems were the pinnacle of human technological achievement during the dark age of technology, artificial intelligence-driven databases that contained the sum total of human scientific and engineering knowledge. These systems were designed to provide construction details for colonists settling new worlds, enabling them to build anything from simple tools to complex starships using locally available materials and without requiring specialized training. An intact STC could theoretically reproduce any human technology ever developed, adapting designs to local conditions and resources. The loss of the STC systems during the Age of Strife represents, to the Mechanicus, the greatest tragedy in human history. With the collapse of interstellar civilization, the warp storms that cut off human worlds from each other, and the rebellion of the Men of Iron, the vast majority of STCs were destroyed or lost. Some fell to deliberate sabotage during the chaos of that age. Others degraded through lack of maintenance, their delicate systems failing as the knowledge needed to repair them vanished. A few were deliberately destroyed by populations that came to fear the technology they had once relied upon. In the current age, complete functional STCs are virtually unknown. What remains are fragments, damaged data cores containing partial information, printouts of specific designs, corrupted files that require centuries of work to decode. Even these fragments are immensely valuable, worth more than entire planetary systems. A printout showing how to construct a particular weapon or vehicle is treated as a sacred relic. A partial data core that might contain information on dozens of designs becomes the object of wars. An intact STC system, should one ever be found, would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. The recovery of STC fragments is the primary focus of Mechanicus explorator fleets. These expeditions venture into unknown space, following fragmentary records, ancient star charts, and pure speculation in search of lost human colonies where STCs might have survived. They investigate ruins on dead worlds, excavate buried complexes on primitive planets, and sometimes engage in diplomacy or conquest to gain access to potential STC locations. The work is dangerous. Many expeditions never return, lost to warp travel mishaps, Xenos attacks, or the simple vastness of space. But the potential rewards drive the Mechanicus to continue launching mission after mission. When an STC fragment is recovered, the event triggers celebrations across the Mechanicus. The discovery is proclaimed as a blessing from the Omnissiah, proof that the machine god favors their efforts. The tech priests who made the discovery are lauded as heroes, showered with honors, and often promoted regardless of their previous rank. Entire Forge worlds might devote themselves to studying the recovered fragment, assigning their best minds to decode any corrupted data and reverse engineer whatever technology the fragment describes. But the quest for knowledge is not limited to STCs. The Mechanicus hungers for any technological advancement, any piece of archaeotech, any fragment of understanding from before the fall. They excavate the ruins of the dark age of technology wherever they can be found. They collect and catalogue every piece of equipment recovered from ancient battlefields. They maintain vast archives containing millions of documents, most barely understood, hoping that someday the right piece of information will make everything else make sense. This hunger for knowledge drives tech priests to extremes that would be considered heretical by other imperial organizations. Some study Xenos technology despite prohibitions against such work, arguing that understanding alien sciences helps humanity combat Xenos threats. They dissect captured alien equipment, analyze strange materials, and sometimes even trade with Xenos races to acquire technological samples. If discovered, such activities can result in severe punishment, but many tech priests consider the risk worthwhile if it advances their understanding. Others venture into even more dangerous territory, seeking knowledge from chaos-corrupted sources. They might investigate demon engines, trying to understand the principles that allow the fusion of warp entities with machinery. They might study artifacts recovered from the Eye of Terror or other warp-touched regions, hoping to find technology from before the fall that has survived intact despite the corruption surrounding it. This is perhaps the most dangerous path, for exposure to chaos corruption can twist even the most devoted tech priest, turning them from servants of the Omnicia into heretics who serve the dark gods. The question of innovation versus preservation creates constant tension within the Mechanicus. Orthodox theology holds that all true knowledge was discovered during the dark age of technology, and that the modern age can only hope to recover what was lost, not create anything truly new. Innovation is viewed with suspicion, seen as arrogant humans pretending they can improve upon the work of their betters. Tech priests who propose new designs or modifications to existing patterns are often accused of tech heresy, their work suppressed or destroyed. Yet some innovation must occur, for the Mechanicus cannot function entirely on recovered knowledge alone. The demands of the Imperium's endless wars require adaptation. Equipment must be modified to function in environments the ancients never encountered. New threats demand new responses. This has led to the development of what might be called acceptable innovation. Changes that are framed not as new creations, but as the rediscovery of lost techniques or the natural evolution of existing patterns. A tech priest who wants to introduce a new weapon design would be wise to present it as a forgotten variant of an ancient pattern rather than a novel creation. The most radical innovator in recent Mechanicus history is Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call, a figure who has become both celebrated and controversial. Call has recovered more STC patterns than any other tech priest in history, but he is also known for his willingness to modify and improve upon traditional designs. His work with the Primaris Space Marines, creating improved variants of the Emperor's original Astartes, represents either the greatest triumph or the most dangerous heresy, depending on who you ask. Call has attracted a following of like-minded radicals who believe the Mechanicus must innovate to survive, but he has also made powerful enemies among the Orthodox faction who view him as a dangerous heretic who should be stopped before his thinking spreads. The quest for knowledge exacts a terrible toll on those who pursue it. Explorator tech priests spend centuries away from home, traveling through the void, often dying in forgotten corners of space without ever seeing their discoveries recognized. Researchers drive themselves to madness trying to decode corrupted data fragments, their minds breaking under the strain of trying to understand concepts for which they lack the foundational knowledge. Those who study forbidden technologies risk corruption, mutation, or possession by entities that should never have been contacted. Even success brings its own burdens. A tech priest who makes a significant discovery becomes a target. Rivals seek to steal credit for the discovery, or to acquire it through any means necessary. Superior officers appropriate the finding for their own purposes, often leaving the discoverer with little recognition. The knowledge itself might prove dangerous to possess, attracting the attention of those who would prefer it remain lost. Many successful discoverers find themselves wishing they had never found what they sought. for the discovery has made them targets and complicated their lives beyond measure. The psychological impact of the endless search is profound. Tech priests devote centuries to the quest, sacrificing everything else in their lives to the pursuit of knowledge. They give up relationships, comfort, safety, eventually even their humanity, all in service to finding the next fragment, the next clue, the next piece of the puzzle. For some, this single-minded focus provides purpose and meaning. For others, it becomes an addiction, a compulsion that drives them to greater and greater extremes in pursuit of diminishing returns. Creating servitors, the dark reality. Among the most disturbing aspects of Mechanicus culture is the creation and use of servitors, cybernetic constructs that occupy a nightmarish space between human and machine, between alive and dead, between person and tool. Servitors are ubiquitous in the Imperium, used for everything from menial labor to military combat, but few outside the Mechanicus truly understand what servitors are or how they are created. The reality is far darker than most Imperial citizens imagine, representing perhaps the clearest example of how the Mechanicus values function over humanity. A servitor begins with a human. The organic components of a servitor must come from living tissue, for the Mechanicus has never successfully created a fully mechanical worker that can match the flexibility and adaptability of a human brain. But the human that becomes a servitor is stripped of almost everything that makes them human: personality, memory, free will, self-awareness. What remains is a biological processing unit, a wetware computer that controls mechanical components according to simple programmed instructions. The process of creating a servitor is called servitorization, and it is considered one of the worst fates that can befall an Imperial citizen. The procedure begins with mind wiping, a brutal process that erases the individual's consciousness, personality, and memories. This is not the selective memory modification used on Imperial agents, but total obliteration of identity. The brain is surgically modified, with large sections removed or heavily damaged to eliminate higher cognitive functions. What remains is carefully programmed with specific instructions, creating a being that can perform designated tasks, but lacks the capacity for independent thought or action. During servitorization, the body is extensively modified with mechanical augmentation. The specific modifications depend on the servitor's intended purpose. Labor servitors receive enhanced strength and stamina, their muscles supplemented or replaced with hydraulic systems, their skeletons reinforced with metal support structures. Gun servitors are converted into mobile weapons platforms, their arms replaced with attached weapons, their bodies armored and their nervous systems hardwired to targeting cogitators. Technical servitors receive arrays of specialized tools, mechadendrite-like appendages, and interfaces that allow them to commune with machinery. The sources of servitors are diverse. Many are vat-grown from cloned tissue, never truly alive in any meaningful sense before becoming servitors. These represent the most ethical source by Imperial standards, for they were never truly human. Others are criminals, sentenced to servitorization by Imperial law. This is considered a fate worse than death, for the criminal's punishment continues as long as their servitor body functions, which could be centuries. Tech heresy, serious crimes against the Mechanicus, or simply offending the wrong tech priest can all result in this sentence. Some servitors are created from those who suffered catastrophic injuries that cannot be repaired. Imperial Guard soldiers who survive severe trauma, workers caught in industrial accidents, even Space Marine aspirants who fail their transformations, all might find themselves converted into servitors rather than being allowed to die. The Mechanicus argues this is mercy, giving the individual a chance to continue serving the Emperor, even if they can no longer do so as a complete human. The individuals themselves are rarely consulted, their consent assumed. The most disturbing truth is that many servitors are purchased or acquired from the general population. Forge Worlds and other Mechanicus facilities regularly requisition human bodies for conversion, and Imperial authorities supply them from populations they deem expendable. The homeless, the mentally ill, those who lack proper documentation, criminals with minor offenses, all might disappear into Mechanicus processing centers, never to be seen again except as servitors. The scale of this practice is horrifying, with some estimates suggesting millions of humans are converted to servitors annually across the Imperium. The ethical questions surrounding servitors are largely ignored by the Mechanicus and the wider Imperium. To question the practice would be to question one of the fundamental pillars of imperial society, for servitors are essential to maintaining the infrastructure that keeps human civilization functioning. Without servitors performing dangerous labor, maintaining equipment in hazardous conditions, and serving as disposable military units, the Imperium would face a severe labor shortage. The human cost is considered acceptable in service to this necessity, but the reality is more complex than the Mechanicus admits. There is evidence suggesting that servitors retain some level of consciousness, trapped inside bodies they cannot control, forced to perform repetitive tasks while remaining aware of their imprisonment. Psychers report sensing agony and despair emanating from servitors. Some servitors exhibit behaviors that suggest residual personality or memory breaking through their programming. There are documented cases of servitors speaking in distress when their programming fails, begging for release or help before their conditioning reasserts itself. The Mechanicus officially denies any such consciousness exists. They argue that the mind-wiping process is complete, that what remains is no more sentient than a cogitator or any other machine. They point to the cult Mechanicus theology, which holds that servitors are in communion with the machine god, that those who have sinned can find redemption through the sacrifice of their individuality. But these arguments ring hollow to those who have heard a servitor cry out in a voice that still sounds human, who have seen the desperate look in a servitor's eyes before their programming locks their expression into empty stillness. Creating servitors is the responsibility of specialized tech priests, primarily biologists magi, who specialize in the fusion of organic and mechanical systems. These tech priests perform the procedures with the same ritualistic reverence they would apply to any other sacred work. They anoint the subject's body with holy oils, recite prayers to the Omnissiah requesting blessing for their work, and carefully follow ancient patterns for the mind-wiping and augmentation procedures. They view their work as holy, transforming sinful or damaged flesh into something that can serve the Emperor properly. The procedures themselves are brutal. The subject is typically conscious throughout, for the neural programming requires active feedback to ensure proper integration. They experience their own mind being disassembled, memories torn away, personality erased, consciousness reduced to a fragment of what it once was. The physical modifications are equally agonizing, involving the removal or modification of organs, the installation of mechanical components, the rewiring of the nervous system. The entire process can take days or weeks, during which the subject endures levels of pain that would drive them mad if they weren't already having their capacity for such reactions removed. Different types of servitors serve different purposes. Labor servitors are the most common, programmed for simple repetitive tasks like carrying loads, operating machinery, or sorting materials. Gun servitors mount heavy weapons and are deployed to defensive positions where they can provide supporting fire without requiring the judgment calls that human soldiers would make. Technical servitors assist tech priests with repairs and maintenance, their programming allowing them to follow complex instructions, but not to innovate or problem-solve independently. Calligraphous servitors specialize in copying documents and taking notes, their augmented hands capable of incredible precision. Expressionarius servitors create propaganda art and decorations, their artistic talents preserved even as their consciousness is destroyed. Combat servitors represent a particularly grim category. These include Praetorian servitors, massive constructs created from ogrin, or giant vat-grown bodies, armed and armored to serve as guards for important Mechanicus facilities. They also include horrifying creations like archoflagellants, criminals who are not fully mind-wiped, but instead kept conscious and aware while being turned into living weapons, their bodies modified with blades and combat drugs, their minds trapped in a state of perpetual agony that can be channeled into murderous fury when they are deployed to battle. The maintenance of servitors is another grim task. Unlike pure machines, servitors have organic components that require care. They must be fed nutrient-paced, though they taste nothing and derive no pleasure from it. They must rest periodically, though their sleep is a mechanical shutdown rather than true rest. Their organic parts can become diseased or injured, requiring medical attention from tech priests who view the work as no different from repairing any other piece of equipment. When a servitor's organic components finally fail, the mechanical parts are salvaged and installed on a new organic base, ensuring nothing goes to waste. Battle and warfare. When the Adeptus Mechanicus goes to war, the battlefield becomes a strange fusion of religious ceremony and brutal violence. Tech priests do not fight as other imperial forces do. They bring with them a way of warfare that is methodical, calculated, and utterly alien to the more straightforward approaches of the Imperial Guard or Space Marines. Every battle is simultaneously a military operation and a religious ritual. Every enemy slain, both a tactical necessity and an offering to the Omnissiah. Tech priests who serve in military capacities, particularly those bearing the title of Magos Dominus or Tech Priest Dominus, command forces very different from typical imperial armies. At the core of their forces are the Skitarii, the cybernetically enhanced soldiers who serve as the military arm of the Mechanicus. These warriors are living weapons, their bodies modified to excel at warfare, their minds conditioned to follow orders without question or fear. A Skitarii cohort advances across the battlefield with mechanical precision, their movements coordinated through nospheric data links, their weapons fire calculated for maximum efficiency. The Skitarii are divided into different types based on their augmentations and equipment. Skitarii Rangers are long-range specialists, their eyes replaced with sophisticated targeting optics, their weapons loaded with radioactive ammunition that poisons the very ground where they fight. They can hunt for years or decades without rest, pursuing their targets across entire star systems if necessary. Skitarii Vanguard are close assault troops, deliberately exposed to massive doses of radiation that would kill baseline humans, but which their augmented bodies can withstand. They march into battle radiating death, their mere proximity enough to sicken and kill enemies before a single shot is fired. Accompanying the Skitarii are servitors, deployed in their thousands. Gun servitors lumber forward, bearing heavy weapons too large for normal humans to carry, their programming driving them to advance and fire without regard for their own survival. Labor servitors are repurposed for combat, their industrial tools turned into improvised weapons. The sight of thousands of servitors marching in perfect lockstep, their empty eyes seeing nothing, their minds containing only the barest instructions, is enough to break the morale of many enemies before combat even begins. Tech priests themselves enter battle as formidable combatants despite their often fragile appearance. A Magos Dominus might appear ancient and decrepit, more machine than flesh, but those machines grant capabilities far beyond what any baseline human could achieve. Mechadendrites lash out with weapons or tools, capable of striking multiple enemies simultaneously. Built-in weapon systems activate, turning the tech priest into a mobile weapons platform. Data tethers connect them to their forces, allowing them to coordinate dozens or hundreds of units with perfect efficiency. The Mechanicus approach to warfare emphasizes calculation over courage, efficiency over glory. Before committing forces to battle, tech priests analyze all available data, computing probabilities of success, calculating acceptable casualty rates, determining optimal firing solutions. A Magos Dominus might spend hours reviewing battlefield data before issuing orders, while their subordinates wait with mechanical patience. When orders finally come, they are executed with precision, every unit moving to exact positions, firing at precisely calculated intervals, advancing or retreating according to mathematical formulae that guarantee maximum success. This approach can be disconcertingly cold to non-mechanicus forces. A tech priest commander will sacrifice units without hesitation if calculations indicate that doing so improves overall chances of victory. They view their forces, even the Skitarii who possess at least some consciousness, as resources to be expended efficiently. The concept of heroic last stands or desperate valor means nothing to them. What matters is achieving the objective with optimal efficiency, and if that requires the death of half their forces, that is simply the logical choice. Combat drugs play a significant role in mechanicus warfare. The Skitarii are equipped with internal dispensers that can flood their systems with performance-enhancing chemicals at will or on command from their tech priest masters. These drugs can grant bursts of incredible strength, speed, or regenerative ability, allowing Skitarii to perform feats that would be impossible for baseline humans. But the drugs are dangerous, causing horrific side effects within minutes of use, potentially killing the user if overdosed. Tech priests calculate the acceptable risk and administer doses accordingly, sacrificing the long-term health of their warriors for immediate tactical advantages. The weaponry employed by mechanicus forces is often experimental or archaic by Imperial standards. They field radium weapons that poison everything they touch, arc rifles that unleash deadly electrical discharges, plasma calivers whose technology is poorly understood even by those who use them. Some weapons are so unstable that they are more dangerous to the wielder than to the enemy, but the mechanicus accepts such risks in pursuit of maximum firepower. They reason that a weapon that kills its user after destroying multiple enemies represents acceptable efficiency. The mechanicus also deploys war machines that dwarf conventional vehicles. Dune crawlers stalk across battlefields on articulated legs, their weapons tracking targets with machine precision. Iron Strider cavalry units race into battle at speeds no wheeled vehicle could match, their pilots fuse directly into their mechanical mounts. When the situation demands overwhelming force, the mechanicus can call upon their Titan legions, deploying god machines, hundreds of feet tall, walking weapons platforms that can devastate entire armies. Tech priests on the battlefield also serve support roles, maintaining equipment, performing field repairs, and ensuring that the machine spirits of vehicles and weapons remain appeased. These tech priests work under fire, often exposed to enemy attacks as they conduct essential rituals. The sight of a tech priest calmly anointing a damaged vehicle with sacred oils, while bullets and lasfire streak past them, is common. They understand intellectually that they are in danger, but their modifications have stripped away most fear response, leaving them able to focus on their duties regardless of circumstances. Battle also provides opportunities for the quest for knowledge. Mechanicus forces prioritize the recovery of technology over other objectives. A tech priest commander might divert forces from a critical position to secure a piece of archaeotech, reasoning that the recovered technology is worth more than winning the current engagement. They collect samples of enemy equipment, especially Xenos technology, for later study. Dead enemies are dissected to understand their biology and vulnerabilities. Every battle is a learning experience, every engagement an opportunity to gather data. The aftermath of battle sees the mechanicus forces engaging in thorough salvage operations. The dead are processed for useful components. Fallen Skitarii have their augmentations recovered for reuse. Servitors are repaired if possible, or their mechanical components salvaged if they are beyond recovery. Enemy equipment is collected and analyzed. The battlefield is stripped of anything that might be useful, leaving behind only what is truly worthless. This pragmatic approach ensures that even defeats can yield valuable resources, though the mechanicus would never frame such operations in those terms. casualties are viewed entirely through the lens of resource management. When a Skitarii falls, the tech priests calculate whether the resources required to recover and repair them exceed the cost of simply creating a replacement. When a servitor is destroyed, its loss is noted only insofar as it reduces available combat capability. Even the death of a tech priest is treated primarily as a data management problem. Have their knowledge archives been properly backed up? Can their augmentations be recovered? Should resources be devoted to replacing them with someone of similar capability? This cold approach to warfare makes the Mechanicus simultaneously highly effective and deeply unsettling to work with. Imperial Guard commanders often request Mechanicus support for their campaigns, appreciating the advanced technology and specialized capabilities the tech priests bring. But those same commanders often find themselves disturbed by the Mechanicus methods, by the way tech priests calculate acceptable losses with no apparent concern for the lives being spent, by the sight of servitors marching mindlessly to their deaths, by the realization that the tech priests view the guard soldiers themselves as just another resource to be optimized. The slow loss of humanity. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of a tech priest's existence is not the pain of augmentation, not the danger of their work, not even the political machinations they must navigate. It is the gradual, inevitable loss of everything that makes them human. This erosion happens slowly, across decades or centuries, but its trajectory is always the same. In replacing flesh with machine, in removing emotion and intuition in favor of logic and efficiency, the tech priests transform themselves into beings that can no longer relate to humanity, even as they claim to serve it. The process begins subtly. A young acolyte receives their first augmentations and discovers that they can no longer taste food the way they once did. The neural pathways responsible for processing flavor having been rerouted to accommodate their cyber mantle. It is a small loss, seemingly insignificant compared to the benefits of their new capabilities. But it is the first of countless such losses, each one minor by itself, accumulating over time into something profound. As more augmentations are added, more sensations fade. The tech priest loses the ability to feel textures properly, their touch mediated through mechanical sensors that provide data rather than tactile experience. They lose the sensation of temperature, their bodies regulated by thermostats and cooling systems rather than responding naturally to heat and cold. Pain persists, but it becomes abstract, a diagnostic signal rather than an immediate physical experience. Even the sense of having a body, of existing in physical space, begins to distort as more and more of their form becomes mechanical. Emotional changes follow the physical ones. The rite of pure thought, when undertaken, strips away the capacity for emotional experience in the most literal way possible, removing the brain structures that process such feelings. But even without this extreme procedure, the constant augmentation of the brain with cogitators and processors changes how a tech priest thinks and feels. They find themselves analyzing situations that once would have provoked immediate emotional responses, calculating optimal outcomes rather than responding with anger, fear, or joy. They lose the ability to form deep, emotional connections with others, viewing relationships primarily in terms of utility and advantage. Memory becomes increasingly strange as organic neural pathways are supplemented and eventually replaced by machine data storage. A tech priest might possess perfect recall of technical specifications from centuries ago while being unable to remember the face of their own parents. They can recite entire volumes of Mechanicus scripture flawlessly, but cannot recall the emotional context of significant life events. Memories become data files, accessible and clear, but divorced from any emotional significance. The past becomes a database to be queried rather than a lived experience to be reflected upon. The loss of creativity is particularly profound for those who undergo the rite of pure thought. The right hemisphere of the brain, responsible for pattern recognition, artistic appreciation, and intuitive leaps, is stripped away, and replaced with pure logic engines. These tech priests become incapable of appreciating beauty, of understanding art, of making the creative connections that drive innovation. They are brilliant at analysis, at calculation, at following established procedures, but they cannot create anything truly new. They become perfect at preserving knowledge, but terrible at generating it. Social interaction becomes increasingly difficult as humanity fades. Tech priests find they can no longer understand the emotional states of others, cannot grasp why people might act irrationally out of love or fear or anger. They struggle to communicate with baseline humans, their speech becoming increasingly technical and laced with binary cant that means nothing to unaugmented people. They lose the ability to recognize social cues, to understand humor, to engage in the normal human interactions that build relationships and communities. They become isolated not by choice, but by their fundamental inability to connect with others in meaningful ways. The recognition of this loss varies among tech priests. Some embrace it, viewing the shedding of humanity as a necessary and desirable step toward union with the Omnissiah. They speak proudly of having transcended the weaknesses of flesh, of having achieved a purity of purpose that baseline humans can never know. They see their transformation as evolution, as becoming something greater than what they were. These tech priests often become the most extreme advocates for further augmentation, encouraging others to follow their path toward complete mechanization. Others struggle with the loss, experiencing something like grief for the humanity they have sacrificed. They can still remember, in an abstract way, what it felt like to experience emotions directly, to form genuine connections with others, to create art or appreciate beauty. They understand intellectually that they have lost something important, even if they can no longer feel that loss viscerally. These tech priests might resist further augmentation, clinging to their remaining organic components, even as they recognize that doing so limits their advancement within the Mechanicus hierarchy. A few rare individuals manage to maintain a connection to their humanity despite extensive augmentation. They have not undergone the rite of pure thought, preserving their emotional capacity even as their bodies become increasingly mechanical. They consciously work to maintain relationships with others, to remember their past, to hold on to the parts of themselves that resist mechanization. These tech priests often become outcasts, viewed with suspicion by their more fully augmented peers, who see their clinging to humanity as weakness or lack of proper devotion. The oldest tech priests, those who have served for centuries or even millennia, often become barely recognizable as having once been human. They exist as minds preserved in nutrient tanks, connected to vast networks of machinery, their consciousness spread across multiple systems. They might simultaneously exist in dozens of locations, their awareness fragmented across numerous data streams. The concept of self becomes fluid and uncertain. Are they still individuals, or have they become something else entirely? Distributed intelligences that happen to have originated from a human baseline. These ancient ones often struggle to communicate with younger tech priests, their thinking having become so alien that even other Mechanicus members find them incomprehensible. They speak in riddles and mathematical formulae, their conversations more like data exchange protocols than actual dialogue. They have accumulated vast knowledge over their extended existence, but accessing that knowledge becomes increasingly difficult as their minds drift further from anything recognizable as human consciousness. The question of whether this loss of humanity matters becomes central to understanding the Mechanicus. From the organization's perspective, the answer is clear. Humanity, in the sense of emotional connection, subjective experience, and organic limitation, is something to be transcended rather than preserved. The goal is to become one with the machine, to achieve a state of being that is superior to baseline humanity in every measurable way. If the price is losing what made them human in the first place, that is not a bug, but a feature. But from outside the Mechanicus, the transformation appears tragic. These individuals begin as humans, with hopes and dreams and connections to others. They sacrifice everything they are in pursuit of knowledge and power, transforming themselves into beings that can no longer understand or appreciate the very things they once valued. They become tools in service to the Imperium, incredibly effective tools to be sure, but tools nonetheless, having voluntarily stripped away everything that might have made them more than that. The irony is that in trying to transcend humanity's limitations, the tech priests often embody humanity's worst qualities taken to extremes. They become obsessed with power and knowledge to the exclusion of all else. They treat others as means to ends rather than as individuals deserving of respect. They lose sight of any purpose beyond the immediate goals of their work. They become, in essence, sociopaths cloaked in religious devotion and armored in sacred steel, their lack of empathy and emotional connection framed as virtues rather than deficits. Conclusion: machine or man? The life of a tech priest in the Warhammer 40,000 universe is one of the most brutally transformative experiences in a setting known for its grimdark horrors. From the moment a young acolyte first enters the halls of the Mechanicus, to the day when an ancient Magos finally ceases functioning after centuries of service, the journey is one of constant sacrifice, unending transformation, and gradual loss of identity. Every augmentation, every ritual, every step closer to the machine god is simultaneously a step away from the humanity they once possessed. We have explored the toxic paradise of the Forge worlds, where the air itself is poison and the very landscape reflects the Mechanicus philosophy that flesh is weak and machine is strong. We have witnessed the brutal process of augmentation, the agonizing surgeries that transform human bodies into mechanical constructs piece by piece, procedure by procedure, until almost nothing organic remains. We have delved into the complex political landscape where knowledge is currency and betrayal is commonplace, where advancement requires not just technical skill, but political acumen and ruthless ambition. We have examined the quest for knowledge that drives the Mechanicus, their desperate search for the lost standard template constructs that represent the holy grail of technological achievement. We have confronted the dark reality of servitor creation, the systematic dehumanization of millions of people transformed into mindless cyborgs in service to imperial efficiency. We have observed tech priests in battle, their cold, calculating approach to warfare that treats living beings as resources to be optimized. And we have traced the slow, inevitable loss of humanity that defines the tech priest's journey, the gradual erosion of everything that makes them human in pursuit of mechanical perfection. The question that emerges from this examination is whether the tech priests have achieved transcendence or tragedy. They would argue that they have evolved beyond the limitations of humanity, that they have achieved a superior form of existence through their union with the machine. They have extended their lifespans far beyond normal human limits, gained capabilities that would seem like magic to baseline humans, accumulated knowledge that spans centuries or millennia. They serve the Imperium in ways that no unaugmented human could, maintaining the technology that keeps human civilization functioning, pushing back against the darkness through their mastery of ancient sciences. But the price they have paid is everything that makes life worth living. They have sacrificed emotional connection, subjective experience, creativity, the ability to appreciate beauty or form genuine relationships. They have transformed themselves into living tools, incredibly sophisticated and effective tools, but tools nonetheless. They work ceaselessly in service to the Imperium and the machine god, never resting, never truly living, existing in a state somewhere between alive and dead, between human and machine, belonging fully to neither category. The tech priests embody one of the central tragedies of the Imperium of man, the way that survival has required the systematic dehumanization of humanity itself. In a galaxy filled with existential threats, where alien races seek to exterminate mankind, and the forces of chaos work to corrupt it. Extreme measures become normalized. The creation of servitors, the brutal augmentation practices, the cold calculation that treats human lives as mere resources, all of these horrors are justified by necessity. Without the Mechanicus and its brutal methods, the Imperium would collapse. The technology that sustains human civilization requires constant maintenance and ritual that only the tech priests can provide. Yet one must question whether survival at this cost is truly survival at all. If maintaining human civilization requires transforming humans into machines, if it requires stripping away emotion and empathy and creativity, if it demands the sacrifice of millions of people transformed into servitors, then what exactly is being preserved? The Imperium that the tech priests serve has become as monstrous as many of the threats it faces, perpetuating cycles of cruelty and dehumanization in the name of survival. The tech priests themselves seem largely blind to this tragedy. Those who have undergone extensive augmentation, particularly the right of pure thought, lack the emotional capacity to recognize what they have lost. They view their transformation as objectively superior, pointing to their enhanced capabilities and extended lifespans as proof of the righteousness of their path. They cannot understand why anyone would hesitate to embrace the same transformation, cannot grasp that others might value the very things they have sacrificed. Their blindness to the horror of their existence is perhaps the most horrible aspect of all. As we close this examination of the brutal life of a tech priest, we are left with deeply uncomfortable questions about the nature of humanity, the price of survival, and the limits of acceptable sacrifice. The tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus are tragic figures, heroes and monsters simultaneously victims and perpetrators of their order's brutal philosophy. They deserve both our pity for what they have lost and our horror at what they have become. In the grim darkness of the far future, the tech priests stand as a warning about the dangers of losing sight of what makes us human in pursuit of power and survival. They are a reminder that it is possible to win every battle and still lose everything that matters, to achieve incredible capabilities while surrendering the very essence of what makes existence worthwhile. They are martyrs to a cause that demands more than anyone should be asked to give, and they give it willingly, even eagerly, blind to the magnitude of their sacrifice. So the next time you encounter the Adeptus Mechanicus in the lore of Warhammer 40,000, remember that behind the imposing figures, wreathed in sacred oils and adorned with holy augmentations, are people who have paid an almost incomprehensible price for the knowledge and power they wield. Remember that the servitors, shuffling mindlessly through the background of imperial scenes, were once humans with thoughts and dreams and loved ones. Remember that the cold, calculating approach to warfare and politics comes from beings who have systematically removed their own capacity for empathy and emotion. Remember, and perhaps understand, why the setting is called grimdark. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of one of the Imperium's most fascinating and horrifying institutions. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the brutal life of a tech priest, please like and subscribe for more Warhammer 40K lore content. The galaxy is vast, filled with countless stories of heroism and horror, sacrifice and betrayal, and there is always more to explore. Until next time, praise the Omnissiah, and may the machine god watch over you.